The humanist approach isn't just about morality. It is about morality, but it's not just about morality. All right? It's also about how we think and how well we think. It's about reason and logic. Humanists have no prescriptions on what you should think. We have no dogmas. We have no taboos. You can think anything you want. We don't care. What we're interested in is how well you think about whatever it is you're thinking about. All right? And we encourage people to think clearly and rationally and logically and scientifically through the use of free thought, skepticism, and critical thinking. Again, because these yield better results than not thinking. Now, a key to how to be happy is contained in a utilitarian description of happiness, which is that people are happy when they are in control. That is, when they feel competent to satisfy their needs and reach their goals. All right? In order to feel content and happy, you have to feel like you have some measure of control in your life and that you're able to get the basic necessities and your needs met and hopefully achieve the goals you set for yourself. There is no happiness without control, without personal control of your life. And this is where responsibility comes in. All right? People often treat responsibility as if it's a bad word, something we should avoid if we want to be happy, because people make a connection between freedom and happiness, and they want to be free, and they think the way to get to be free is to avoid their responsibility. But just the opposite is true, and this is one of the secrets that humanists know that you should. Freedom, and therefore happiness, can only be achieved through responsibility. When you accept responsibility for your life, you gain control over it in a way that is unparalleled. There are three characteristics of humanist ethics that make it unique, all right? And I want to, before we get started, each individual aspect of this is not unique to humanism. It's kind of the combination of these things that make humanism humanism. And even then, ethics is only one part of the philosophy. It also works with how we think and responsibility and stuff. So anyways, what is humanist ethics, all right? The first thing you need to know about humanist ethics is that it is a rational, pragmatic ethic, right? What it is not is a religious ethic. All right? We aren't concerned with divine revelation. We are concerned with how to make things better, not just for ourselves, but for everyone else here and now. Humanism is also a compassion-based ethic. Obviously, ours is not the only ethical system to be based on compassion. But we are the only ones who seem to think this is sufficient unto itself. Like, we don't need to have divine statements about what is good and bad. We just need to be compassionate. Finally, humanist ethics are situational. We feel quite strongly that any system that claims to be absolute, any ethical system that claims to be absolute, is going to cause more harm than good. And while, these are kind of technical terms, we're going to describe them each in detail individually. Why does this matter? Why does believing things that aren't true cause problems? And does believing things that aren't true cause problems? And yes, it does. It can cause a lot of harm. And that harm can be financial, or it could be physical, it could be emotional. On your handout for this week, you're going to see a link to what's the harm. And I encourage you to check it out, because even things as simple as astrology can cause harm. We skeptics aren't bashing these things just to be wet towels. I mean, there's a consequence to believing things that turn out not to be true. If you cannot tell when someone is telling you the truth or not, you are a prime target for charlatans and scam artists who want to make money at your expense. And there are always going to be charlatans and scam artists out there trying to dupe people who don't think critically. And the more critically you think, the less susceptible you are to that sort of scam artist. Every year in the county I live in, about once a year, a psychic comes through town and bilks about 10 people out of a collective amount of about $50,000. And these are almost always poor people that somehow find $50,000 to give to a psychic, and then the psychic runs off with their money and is never heard from again. This happens like once a year in my county. And, you know, you can say, well, that serves these people right for giving their money to a psychic, all right? But the problem is these people could have spent that money on something better, and we're not talking about them, we're talking about you. Like, how are you going to make decisions about what is real and what is not, all right? And you do have to be careful because there are consequences to believing things that aren't proven to be real. As strong as an emotion as compassion is, right, it completely changes your attitude when you feel it. It takes you outside of yourself. It isn't about you anymore. It's about someone else. And it turns out that thinking about the welfare of others, while it can often be very heartbreaking, as we've discussed, it can also be incredibly satisfying. Think about it. When you're being selfish, right, and it's all about you, you're effectively isolating yourself from everyone around you, right? Because it isn't about everyone else, it's about you, right? Whatever that's going on, it's about you, only you, just you, all right? By contrast, when you feel compassion for others, you're reaching out beyond yourself, right, to connect in a really deeply human way with other people, right? Compassion makes you feel content precisely because it connects you to others, right? This is really powerful. You know, so many people are looking to feel connected to something bigger than themselves, right? There's this hole that we all kind of feel that we're alone in the universe, right? The way to alleviate that feeling of aloneness is through compassion, to understand that you're not actually alone. And to do that, you need to get out of your own head and feel compassion for other people. That's what connects you to the rest of humanity and to the universe, is this compassion for others. This is a really, really heady idea, right? It has really far-reaching implications for our sense of responsibility, right? Because if you believe you have the ability to impact and alter the outcome of events, then you're pretty much admitting that you have a moral responsibility to make sure that the outcome is good and not bad, right? This is why the American Humanist Association, in its definition of humanism, says that we have the ability and the responsibility to lead ethical lives of personal fulfillment that aspire to the greater good of humanity. Right? You have the ability, and therefore you have the responsibility to lead a good and ethical life. Let's talk about human responsibility as a virtue. Now, most people view responsibility as a virtue. If you're responsible, you are dependable and reliable and trustworthy. If you're responsible, it means that you feel morally obligated to fulfill your duties to others. All right? Most people consider being responsible a really good thing. You know, think about it. Who do you want to hang out with? Do you want to hang out and work with people who are responsible, or do you want to hang out with people who are irresponsible? Obviously, you want to hang out with people who are responsible because it makes your life better. This is why we value responsibility in ourselves and in others. What was really interesting is when I was putting this slide together, I thought, oh, it's, you know, humanism isn't the only philosophy that treats responsibility as a virtue. It's such an obvious thing. It's going to be everywhere. Turns out that when you look at official lists of virtues, none of them seem to include responsibility in them. You know, it isn't listed in the Catholic virtues, it isn't listed in the heathen virtues, and it's not listed in the Confucian virtues, which kind of shocked me. Now, ironically enough, one of the areas of coping with things you cannot change is the fact that, ironically enough, things change. All right, you have to accept again that things don't stay the same; they are going to change. Now, regardless of what change we're looking at, we're almost all sure when confronted with change that we didn't ask for or look for, that it doesn't matter what the change is, we're pretty much sure we're not going to like it. All right, it's like this cat. He's very sure he's not going to like that bath. All right, that's his immediate concern. Not going to like the bath. It doesn't matter that it's probably a flea bath and he's probably going to feel better afterwards by not having fleas on him. Whatever the change is that's confronting him, he ain't going to like it. That's all he's sure of, right? And humans feel the same way about change. Our initial response is, no, I don't want to experience this. Don't change. But we're also thinking, okay, when we accept change, right, change is going to happen. If we could just be sure that whatever was going on, it would turn out okay for us. Like at the end of this, whatever's going on would turn out well for us. We would be fine, right? The stress is, once again, not knowing and not having control over the outcome of something that's happening to us, right? Not having control. This is why you have to accept you don't have control over this. This is happening whether you want it to or not. If we could be sure that things would turn out well for us, it would reduce our stress tremendously. And I think this is why people seek out psychics and all manner of woo, right? They're trying, because they don't actually have control, and because not having control over what's going on is stressing them out, they look for ways to get control, even if it's a fantasy, even if it's not real. So they'll see psychics and they'll do palm readings and they'll do any manner of what we call woo, because they're trying to reduce their stress. Now, the problem, as we talked about before, is believing in things that aren't true has consequences. It's reducing your stress in the short term, but in the long term, you just wasted time, energy, and resources on something that's not actually going to help you, and we would consider that maladaptive. All right. So, how do humanists cope with the stress of change? Well, again, the first thing we do is we accept that we can't change the fact that things are going to change. This is something we have to accept.